It was the kind of cold that didn't just settle in your bones, it questioned your right to be warm. The kind of night where the air feels heavier than usual, not because of humidity, but because of silence. A thick, accusatory silence that echoed across the parking lot of the 24-hour diner in West Memphis, Arkansas. One of those diners that never really sleeps but never really wakes up either, caught in a limbo of flickering neon lights and broken coffee machines. Outside, under the weak yellow glow of a broken street lamp, a woman stood alone. Her name was Jolene Carter, and she had just enough left in her to fake composure. Her jacket, once beige, was now the color of resignation. Her hands were trembling, but not from the cold. Trembling, because everything in her life had narrowed down to this very night, this exact minute, this particular moment of collapse. There are moments like that in a person's life, where time pauses, and the air itself feels like it's watching you fail. She had spoken to 6 people that day. 6 strangers. Each time, the same words had come out of her mouth like a broken record, just until tomorrow. I just need a place until tomorrow. But, tomorrow, is an elusive thing for someone like Jolene. It never really arrives. Not when you've run out of favors. Not when every knock you make sounds like a lie. The 7th person she asked looked her dead in the eye and said, "Ma'am, I don't give money to addicts." As if the pain on her face was a stain she chose to wear. As if being desperate was synonymous with being dangerous. And then, just as she turned to leave, just as the night felt like it had finally closed in, she heard it. A voice. Small. Deliberate. And utterly disarming. "You need a home. And I need a mother." Jolene froze. At first, she thought it was her imagination playing cruel tricks. But then she turned. And saw her. A little girl. Maybe 7. Maybe 8. Her coat was 2 sizes too big, the sleeves almost swallowing her hands. Her boots were mismatched. Her cheeks pink from the wind, but her eyes, they were still. Observant. Old in a way that made Jolene's heart catch in her throat. "What did you say?" The girl stepped closer, her voice steady but void of the childish inflection Jolene expected. "I said, you need a home. And I need a mother." That sentence, it didn't feel like a proposal. It felt like a verdict. Jolene looked around, expecting someone, anyone, to come claim the child. But there was no one. Just the humming of a soda machine and the distant roar of a semi-truck taking a corner too fast. "Where's your mom?" The girl pointed to the empty bench near the bus stop. "Gone. Hours ago. She left after she said she was just going to buy a sandwich." A pause. "She said she'd come back." And there it was, that fracture in her voice. Just a hairline crack, but enough for Jolene to feel it like a scream. Because hope, when it breaks, makes no sound at all. Jolene should have walked away. She should have told the girl to go inside the diner. Should have alerted someone. Should have minded her own damn collapse. But instead, she sat down beside her. And for the first time in what felt like centuries, she wasn't thinking about survival. She was thinking about this girl. And the impossible math of what she'd just said. A home. And a mother. 2 broken things trying to fit into each other's fractures. "What's your name?" The girl hesitated. "Lena." Lena. Like the kind of name someone once whispered with love, but hadn't spoken in a long time. Jolene stared at her, unsure what to say next. She knew this wasn't right. She knew this wasn't safe. And yet, something about the way Lena sat there, motionless, calm, was almost magnetic. Like a gravity Jolene couldn't escape, even if she tried. "How old are you?" Lena shrugged. "Depends on the day." The answer chilled her more than the wind. It wasn't the kind of answer you give unless you've had to become someone else just to make it through. Jolene pulled her jacket tighter, not for warmth, but to hide the shaking. "You can't just go with strangers, Lena. That's not safe." Lena's gaze didn't flinch. "But you're not a stranger. I watched you." Jolene blinked. "Watched me? You asked 6 people for help before me. I counted. That doesn't mean you know me. It means I know who you're not. That was the moment Jolene felt it, that invisible thread between them. Fragile. Ridiculous. Terrifying. But real. There are things we don't say out loud because naming them makes them dangerous. Makes them true. And Jolene had spent too many years pretending she didn't want to be someone else. Pretending she didn't long to be needed. Now, this little girl was sitting beside her like a living mirror, daring her to admit what she'd buried. Where will you go if I say no? Lena didn't answer right away. Her silence was heavier than her words could ever be. Then I'll wait for the next woman who looks like she's lost something. Jolene looked down. Her fingers clenched. She felt something inside her shift, a slow, grinding ache like an old door finally giving way. Not because she believed she could be a mother, but because in that moment, she realized she might be the last person on earth who could keep this girl from disappearing completely. And isn't that what home really is? Not a place, but a person who refuses to look away. Come on, Jolene whispered, standing up. Let's find somewhere warm. Lena didn't smile. She didn't say thank you. She just stood and followed. Quietly. As if she'd always known this would happen. And Jolene, she didn't feel like she was rescuing anyone. She felt like she'd just made a deal with something sacred. Something dangerous. She didn't know that in less than 24 hours, everything she thought she understood about herself, about love, about trust, would collapse like a paper house in the rain. But for now, all she knew was that she wasn't alone anymore. And neither was Lena. They ended up in a motel that smelled like mildew and memories no one wanted to claim. The kind of place where the curtains never fully close, and the carpet holds secrets in its stains. Jolene had paid in cash, bills crumpled and reluctant to leave her hand. The man behind the front desk didn't ask questions. He barely even looked at her. In places like this, eye contact costs extra. Lena sat on the edge of the bed, legs swinging just above the floor, silent like she'd been told too many times that silence was safer than speaking. Jolene stood by the door, unsure if she was supposed to offer comfort or keep her distance. The heat from the radiator clicked on with a wheeze, but the cold still clung to the walls. You hungry? Lena nodded. Jolene opened the plastic bag she'd brought from the gas station. 2 peanut butter sandwiches, a bottle of water, and a bag of chips. Not much, but enough to bridge the space between them. She handed one sandwich over, watching as Lena inspected it like it might vanish if she blinked. How long were you waiting out there? A beat passed. Long enough to stop counting. That answer was too calm, too rehearsed. Jolene hated how easily Lena spoke in half-truths, the way her words hovered between childlike and ancient. Kids weren't supposed to talk like that. Kids weren't supposed to be that still. She took a seat on the other bed, her back against the headboard. Her legs ached. Her mind ached more. There was a storm of thoughts pressing against her skull, but none of them made sense in this moment. None of them explained what she was doing here with a child that wasn't hers. That had chosen her like fate in a dirty coat. You ever been in a motel before? Lena nodded, chewing quietly. Once. But that one had roaches. Jolene almost laughed. Almost. This one probably does too. A silence fell between them again, not awkward, but aware. A silence that said we're both broken, but we're trying to pretend it's okay. Outside, a car alarm wailed once and then died. The city didn't sleep, even when it had nothing left to stay awake for. Jolene looked over. Lena's eyes were on the wall, fixed on the water stain above the curtain rod. Her sandwich lay half-eaten on the wrapper. You miss her. It took a moment before Lena answered. Which one? That stopped Jolene cold. Your mom. Another pause. Then. She wasn't mine. Not really. Jolene's stomach twisted. She wanted to ask more. She wanted to know everything. Names, places, how a little girl ended up alone in the dark saying things like I need a mother. But the truth was like glass. If you stepped on it too fast, you'd bleed. So instead, she breathed deep and nodded, as if the world made sense in fragments. Lena glanced at her suddenly, eyes narrowing just enough. Why were you asking people for help? Jolene hesitated. It's funny how a child's question can feel more like a confession booth. Because I lost everything. Lena tilted her head. All at once. No, Jolene looked down at her hands. Bit by bit. That's the cruel part. You never realize what you're losing until you're too empty to care. Lena seemed to accept that answer. Or maybe she just understood it too well. You do drugs. The question stabbed clean through the fog. Jolene looked up sharply. Lena wasn't judging. Just cataloging. Like someone who'd been around enough broken adults to know which ones were dangerous and which ones were just defeated. I did. Jolene's voice was low. I'm trying not to anymore. A long pause. Good. Lena reached for the chips. That stuff makes people mean. They forget how to talk without yelling. Jolene closed her eyes for a second, the weight of that sentence pressing against her ribs. There was a knock on the wall from the room next door. Muffled voices. A man yelling something about a phone charger. Another door slammed. The kind of soundtrack you never want to memorize but end up knowing by heart anyway. Do you trust me? Jolene asked, suddenly. Lena didn't answer right away. Then, she folded the chip bag shut and lay back on the bed. Not yet. Fair. More than fair. Trust was a currency both of them had spent too freely before. Now they were bankrupt in belief, rich only in hesitation. Jolene turned off the lamp, leaving only the dull orange light from the bathroom. She lay down, shoes still on, coat zipped up, because safety isn't about locks, it's about readiness. In the quiet, she listened to Lena's breathing. Steady. Present. Proof of life. And in that stillness, Jolene realized something terrifying. She wasn't scared of Lena. She was scared of what Lena saw in her. Not the brokenness, but the potential. The horrifying, hopeful idea that maybe, just maybe, she could be more than what life had reduced her to. Maybe this wasn't just survival. Maybe it was the beginning of a reckoning. The kind you don't walk away from unchanged. Morning didn't arrive like hope. It crept in, gray, unapologetic, through the slit in the curtains like a truth no one wanted to face. Jolene had barely slept. Every time her eyes closed, her mind played loops of half-formed fears. Lena disappearing in the night, a knock on the door from someone looking for her, a memory from Jolene's own past clawing its way back in with dirty fingernails and no remorse. Survival teaches you to listen even in sleep, to the shifts in the air, the creaks in the floorboards, the silent way time passes when you're on the edge of something irreversible. She turned her head slowly toward the other bed. Lena was still there. Curled up, one hand gripping the blanket like it might be taken from her. Jolene stared for a long time. She didn't know how to be what Lena needed. She didn't even know what Lena needed. But she knew the girl hadn't asked for toys or smiles or promises. She had asked for something harder. To matter. Jolene got up quietly. She walked to the bathroom, flicked on the light. Her reflection met her like a stranger she used to know. The hollows under her eyes, the red marks around her jaw, the faint scar on her collarbone from that night 3 winters ago. Everything was still there. Memory etched into skin. She washed her face with cold water. When she came back, Lena was sitting up, blinking slowly, her hair wild, her expression unreadable. You stayed, Lena said. Not a question. Jolene nodded. I said I would. Lena pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. Most people don't. There was no bitterness in her voice. Just observation. Like someone who had stopped expecting anything different. Jolene sat on the bed across from her. I'm not most people. Lena tilted her head. Prove it. And there it was again, that sharp edge in her softness. A child's body holding a soul splintered too many times. Jolene didn't flinch. She leaned in slightly. How? Lena didn't answer. Instead, she got off the bed, walked to the window, and peeked through the curtain. We can't stay here long. Jolene exhaled. You're right. She grabbed her coat, checked the pockets. Still had $27. Enough for one more day of food. Maybe a bus ticket. Maybe nothing. She turned to Lena. There's a church a few blocks from here. Sometimes they help people like us. Lena's eyes didn't move from the window. People like us. The kind nobody plans for. Lena finally looked at her. Something in her face softened. They left together. Cold air hit their faces as they stepped onto the sidewalk. The motel behind them looked smaller now, like it had shrunk under the weight of what it had witnessed. As they walked, Jolene noticed Lena's limp. Subtle but real. She stopped. Your leg, what happened? Lena didn't look at her. Fell down some stairs. Too fast. Too rehearsed. Jolene knew what that meant. Did she push you? Lena shrugged. Jolene didn't push further. Not yet. Not when the answer was probably already tattooed into Lena's memory, into the way she flinched slightly when someone spoke too loudly nearby. The church wasn't much, a square brick building with a rusted bell that hadn't rung in years. But it had a sign out front. Hot meals served daily. No judgment, no questions. Inside, it smelled of soup and old wood. A woman behind a folding table smiled at them. Jolene stepped forward, but before she could speak, Lena took her hand. Not held it. Clutched it. It startled Jolene, how warm that small hand felt in hers. How much trust was in that one gesture. They sat at a table in the back. A bowl of stew. A slice of bread. Lena ate slowly, like someone used to making food last. Jolene nibbled at hers, eyes scanning the room. Men with tired eyes. Women with babies on their laps. People with too many stories and nowhere left to tell them. This was where the forgotten came to breathe. A woman in her 60s approached. Silver braids. Denim jacket. Her presence wasn't soft, but it wasn't hard either. You two new around here? Jolene looked up. Just passing through. The woman's eyes lingered on Lena. You need anything for her? Coat, shoes, maybe. Lena kept her head down. Jolene hesitated. Then, she needs somewhere safe. The woman studied her. And you? Jolene felt that question like a slap. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. I need to stop running. The woman nodded slowly. There's a shelter 2 miles east. Women and kids only. They don't ask too many questions. Jolene's throat tightened. Thank you. They left with a paper map, a name scribbled in pen, and something else, an invitation to believe, just for a little while, that not everyone saw them as a problem. As they walked again, Jolene holding the map, Lena holding her silence, there was a quiet between them. But it wasn't the same kind of quiet as before. It wasn't survival anymore. It was something like forming, becoming. Two strangers orbiting a shared truth neither had words for yet. And in the distance, behind the clouds, the sun tried to break through. The shelter sat behind a rusted chain-link fence that leaned slightly to the left, like even it was tired of standing. No sign. No welcome mat. Just a buzzer and a small security camera that blinked like an impatient eye. Jolene pressed the buzzer with a shaking finger. A woman's voice crackled through the speaker. Name. Jolene looked at Lena, then back at the camera. Just Jolene. And this is Lena. A long pause. Then a loud buzz as the gate unlocked with a metallic clank that felt more like a verdict than permission. Inside, the building was colder than outside. The walls were cinder block. The floors, linoleum. The kind of place designed to be temporary but always ended up permanent for someone. Still, it smelled clean. Like bleach and caution. A woman in a navy blue hoodie met them at the door. Her name tag read, Maria. She had the eyes of someone who'd seen too much and chosen to stay kind anyway. "How long have you been out?" Maria asked. Jolene didn't lie. "A few weeks. Lost my job. Lost my place. Been staying wherever I can." Maria's eyes flicked to Lena. "And her. She's not." Jolene stopped. The sentence crumbled halfway through. Maria didn't press. She nodded and handed Jolene a clipboard. "Fill this out as best you can. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just real." They were given beds in the back, in a room with peeling yellow paint and 4 other women. One woman coughed non-stop. Another muttered to herself. Lena didn't flinch. She took it all in like she'd seen worse. Probably had. They sat on their bunks in silence for a while. Jolene was trying to think of next steps, but her brain kept looping back to that moment in the diner parking lot. That voice. That sentence. "You need a home. And I need a mother." It hadn't felt like a plea. It had felt like fate. But now, sitting here, the weight of everything pressing down, Jolene wondered if fate had a plan or if it just threw broken people together to watch what happened. Later that night, after dinner, Jolene stood in line for the shared bathroom while Lena sat cross-legged on the bunk, flipping through a coloring book someone had given her at the shelter entrance. She wasn't coloring. Just flipping. Slowly. Page after page. Jolene turned to the woman behind her in line. "How long have you been here?" The woman, middle-aged, with wiry red hair and a cigarette behind her ear, gave a dry laugh. "Too long to remember. Not long enough to matter." Jolene nodded like she understood. Because maybe she did. She went back to the room. Sat beside Lena, who didn't look up. "You're quiet today," Jolene said. Lena turned a page. "You talk enough for both of us." It was meant as a joke. Or maybe not. Jolene smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I don't know what I'm doing," she whispered. Lena finally looked up. "No one does. They just pretend better." That sentence hit like gospel. Jolene leaned back against the wall, letting her head thud softly against the concrete. "What happens to kids like you?" Lena shrugged. "Some go into the system. Some disappear. Some get lucky. Which one are you?" "You tell me." That silence between them returned. But now it wasn't emptiness. It was full. Of questions. Of what-ifs. Of 2 lives that had collided not out of convenience, but out of necessity. Jolene felt something crawl up her spine. Something foreign. Responsibility. Not the kind the court assigns. The kind you choose. The kind that doesn't wait for paperwork or signatures. The kind that starts when someone looks at you and sees home. "Why me, Lena?" Jolene's voice broke slightly. "Out of all the people you could have talked to that night. Why me?" Lena stared at her for a long time. So long that Jolene thought she wouldn't answer. But then. "Because you were the only one who looked like she still had something to lose." Jolene swallowed hard. That sentence, it wrapped around her like a noose and a lifeline at the same time. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know if someone would come looking for Lena. She didn't know if she could be enough. But she knew this. For the first time in years, someone saw something in her worth saving. And maybe that was enough for now. They lay in their bunks that night. 2 shadows under flickering light. Not mother and daughter. Not yet. But something. Something beginning. Something terrifying. Something real. Rain started sometime before dawn. Not the kind that washes things clean, but the slow, whispering kind, the kind that soaks into your skin like regret. Jolene sat upright in her bunk, staring at the ceiling, listening to it fall in steady, accusing rhythm. Across the room, Lena slept curled into herself, hands tucked beneath her cheek, face calm in a way that made Jolene ache. Children shouldn't know this kind of peace, because it only came after too much chaos. It was the kind of calm you learned after realizing no one was coming to save you. Jolene slipped on her shoes quietly and stepped into the hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed above her. She walked until she found the kitchen. Empty, except for an old woman at the sink scrubbing out a pan. Her back hunched like memory had taken its toll. Jolene poured herself a cup of instant coffee. It tasted like cardboard and surrender. "You're the new one," the woman said, not turning around. "Guess I am. She your kid?" Jolene stared into the murky coffee. "Not exactly." The woman snorted. "Ain't no such thing as not exactly when a kid looks at you like that." Jolene didn't answer. Because she couldn't. Because she didn't know what Lena's eyes meant. Not yet. They weren't trust, not fully. But they weren't suspicion anymore, either. They were something in between, like a question still waiting for an honest answer. When she got back to the room, Lena was awake. Sitting cross-legged again, staring at the window. "It's raining," she said, voice low. "I noticed. I like the rain." Jolene sat down on the edge of her bed. "Why?" Lena didn't hesitate. "Because it makes everything quiet. People don't yell in the rain." Jolene nodded slowly. That made sense. Too much sense. "You ever had a real home?" Jolene asked. Lena tilted her head like the question was foreign. "I had places. But they weren't home." "What's the difference?" "Home doesn't feel like you have to apologize for being there." Jolene felt that one in her ribs. She wanted to say something, anything, that would offer comfort. But Lena didn't want comfort. She wanted truth. So Jolene gave her some. "I used to live in a place with yellow walls. The kind of yellow that felt fake. Like someone painted over sadness." Lena's eyes narrowed. "Did someone hurt you there?" Jolene didn't blink. "Every day. And every day, I told myself it wasn't that bad. Because at least I had somewhere to sleep. At least I wasn't out in the cold. That's how they keep you." Jolene looked at her sharply. "Where did you learn that?" Lena's voice was flat. "From people who only showed me kindness when no one else was looking." The room went quiet again. The rain tapped at the windows like it was trying to come inside. Jolene stood, walked to the small dresser, pulled out the bag of things someone at the shelter had handed them. Socks, soap, a comb. She took out the comb and motioned toward Lena. "May I?" Lena hesitated. That pause, barely half a second, was everything. But then she nodded. Jolene sat behind her and gently began pulling the comb through Lena's tangled hair. Each knot was a memory, each stroke an apology for things Jolene hadn't done but still felt responsible for. She didn't speak. Just worked slowly, gently, like she was trying to untangle more than just hair. After a while, Lena spoke again. Soft. Tentative. "What if someone comes looking for me?" Jolene froze. Not because she hadn't thought about it, but because she had. Every night. Every time she dared to imagine keeping Lena close, the image was shadowed by flashing lights and stern voices and paperwork she couldn't fight. "Do you want someone to come?" Jolene asked carefully. Lena shook her head. "I just want to stop moving." That sentence wrapped around Jolene's heart and held it there. Because she understood. She'd spent years moving, city to city, couch to couch, mistake to mistake, never realizing the exhaustion wasn't physical. It was soul deep. "I don't know what happens next," Jolene admitted. Lena turned to look at her, eyes searching. "But you want me to stay, right?" Jolene didn't answer right away. Because this wasn't pretend. This wasn't charity. This was a line she couldn't uncross. And crossing it would mean war. With the system, with herself, with the past. But when she looked at Lena, really looked, she didn't see a problem. She saw a reason. "Yes," she said finally. "I want you to stay." Lena didn't smile. She didn't move. But something shifted in the air. Like maybe, for the first time, she believed someone meant it. They didn't leave the shelter for 3 more days. The rain never stopped. Not really. It became a rhythm, like breathing. Like something sacred refusing to be ignored. Each morning, Jolene woke before Lena. She watched the girl sleep, memorizing the way her chest rose and fell, as if it were a miracle that someone so small, so discarded, still knew how to dream. They shared meals. Jolene taught Lena how to use the washers in the basement. Lena taught Jolene how to fold socks into perfect, tight rolls, like the foster homes made her do. Every interaction was quiet, ordinary, but beneath it all pulsed a truth neither of them dared say aloud. They didn't want to let go. On the 4th day, a caseworker showed up. Not for Lena. For Jolene. Someone at the shelter had flagged her name. Protocol. A record of an old arrest. Nothing major. Trespassing from a night she'd been too drunk to remember. But enough to stir the waters. Enough to paint her in grayscale again. The woman asked questions with polite sharpness. Are you the girl's legal guardian? Jolene's throat burned. No. Are you seeking custody? A pause. I don't know. It wasn't the answer they wanted. But it was the truth. She wasn't trying to steal a child. She was trying to build something with bare hands and no blueprint. The woman left with a warning. Jolene stood in the hallway for a long time after that. When she returned, Lena was sitting on the floor, tying her shoelaces. Her hands were shaking, just barely. They're going to take me, aren't they? Jolene sat beside her. I don't know. Lena didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She just looked at Jolene the way someone looks at a door, waiting to see if it will open or slam shut. If they take me, don't forget me. Jolene reached out and took her hand. Not gently. Not softly. But with purpose. Like anchoring them both to something that couldn't be taken. You're not forgettable, Lena. You're unforgettable. Lena blinked hard. And whispered, you're the only thing that's ever felt safe. That was the moment Jolene knew. Not in her mind. In her bones. In every cell that had ever believed she wasn't enough. She wasn't meant to save Lena. She was meant to choose her. No matter what it cost. Later that night, they lay side by side on Jolene's bunk. Neither spoke. The lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere down the hall, a baby cried. The world remained broken. But for now, inside this small space between them, something held. A beginning. Not a perfect one, but one that was finally real. If you liked this story, subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.